Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah.
And thanks for joining us today for our latest episode.
Yeah, so today we'll be speaking with Henry Marcacci. He is the owner of a successful Amazon FBA and Amazon KDP business. He'll be discussing the growth of his Amazon FBA business he purchased from Empire Flippers and how his $30K investment has turned into 5 to 6x his initial monthly revenue.
Yeah, it's really great to see. And I love hearing from people that have been successful from their acquisition on our marketplace. I'm also excited to learn more from Henry about how he used his profits from his Amazon KDP business to fund this acquisition. Also, his strategy to look for business potential and how to survive when your business demand skyrockets is really interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got so many nuggets of wisdom. We won't give away too much just yet. Let's dive into the interview first and see what Henry has to share. And then at the end of the episode, we'll go over some of the best listings on the marketplace currently, just to highlight some of the growth opportunities we've learned about today.
Awesome. So today we have Henry Marcacci, and he is the owner of a few FBA businesses and a few other monetizations in the online space. So thanks for joining us on the call today, Henry.
Hey, thank you both so much. I'm really happy that you pulled me in and appreciate you again for reaching out.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you on the call with us today. We're excited to talk to you about some of your experience in building some online digital properties and going through the process and a few of the trends that have been happening as of lately to optimize your businesses. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your business experience or how you got started in the online business space?
Absolutely. I actually joined in the online business space in around 2015. I was graduating college around the time, and I'd been through a couple internships and co-ops, and I worked for some corporate spaces. And I've always had this drive or just want to get into the entrepreneurial space. I've always loved that creative spot as well. And I developed these as a side passion and side projects while I worked in the more corporate areas as well. I've always had a love for coding and a love for writing. And those are the two things that have paid off the most with the businesses that I focused on. And in 2014, 2015, I got involved with Amazon e-publishing. So anything along the lines of Kindle. I started learning about how to sell books online on Amazon. I became an indie author in fantasy and science fiction in there, saw a good amount of success. And then in addition to running that, decided to diversify and move into FBA as well. So both of my two primary businesses right now are run through Amazon, whether it's on their Kindle side or KDP, or in the FBA and the fulfillment side. And both of those, again, are just a way to unleash that creative talent, a way to chase after a passion. And at the same time, definitely make some diversification and some cash on the side, and then build that up to a portfolio as I get older that could become the sole source of income.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a solid plan. And, I'm sure what a lot of digital entrepreneurs have been aspiring to also build up as well. And are you doing this solely on your own right now, Henry? Or do you have kind of a team of VAs or maybe some outsourced help that's kind of helping you along with managing these assets?
From a management perspective, I manage it all on my own. And one thing that I focus upon is, I guess you could call it lazy managing, is I want to try to find ways to make it as passive as possible. But from an actual team perspective, when we look at products or look at different, maybe let's say novels or whatever it is that we're trying to sell, I do have people that help out a lot along the way. For instance, if I'm developing some sort of digital art, I have a specific cover designer. I have editors that come in and help out with that. If I'm working on art that might be for an Amazon page, such as trying to develop a new FBA listing, I have people I've met online during my time that help devise the different pictures that would go up on there, or graphic designers. I'm definitely not someone that can do everything, but from the management perspective, I do roll with that on my own.
That's awesome. I love how you said you're approaching your businesses with Amazon FBA and KDP from like a creative and a passion perspective. Is not something that I always get to hear. So it's kind of cool. I think a lot of people go in and they're going for like the hard numbers and I want to be an entrepreneur, but you actually have like your talents and vested interest in this. So pretty awesome. I'm curious, like, can you just walk me through this, I guess, taking a step back and thinking about the time that you were going to buy a business? What was it that you were looking for? I mean, did you already have in mind that you wanted to get started with FBA, or were you just kind of like an open book? Just kind of walk me through that a bit.
Absolutely. So again, my start came in through writing indie novels. And one thing that I noticed is that it was very hard to develop a supply chain where you can actually ship out hardbacks or signed copies out to customers. And I realized during that time that I might potentially want to do something along those lines. And I realized that I had no experience with any sort of physical e-commerce. Everything I did online up until that point had been digital files, whether it's a Kindle book or something else that's sent back and forth. There's no inventory. There's nothing to have to do with supply chain or moving product around or actually even getting the product in the store. So my big concern back then is I realized, hey, if I ever have an idea, if I ever have an invention or something I want to sell or a product I put together, I have absolutely no idea how to do it. And so one of the big areas and reasons that I purchased a business is I saw that someone else had put all this together. I could learn from it and I could develop that and try to become a master at it so that in the future, if I do have an idea or do have something that I want to push and develop, I've already got the skills that are available to push that on the physical marketing side. So that's really what drove me to it, is the ability to develop those own skills in myself, to understand, the Amazon algorithm, and there's so many little pieces and details that can either make or break you, and trying to get that on a smaller scale so that if I ever want to do something on a larger scale, it would be available and possible. I work in supply chain. I absolutely love supply chain. It feels like a game to me. So, when some people are going home watching Netflix, and I do that too, but it's interesting. It feels like playing Monopoly for an hour at home once a week or however often you're doing it and trying to allocate resources. And I find it relaxing. So I enjoy that as well.
Wow. I'm actually super jealous of you because I'm sure there's so many people listening to this wish that part of running their FBA business was fun and they just are not there and they don't know how to gamify it. So yeah, maybe that's what you should start offering people, is helping them figure out how to make their supply chain fun. I think there'd be a high demand for that.
There are nightmare days as well. Don't get me wrong. Definitely some ugly days too. But again, it's like a game. If you're winning a game or doing well at a game and you understand all your different pieces, it's a lot less stressful than if there's a lot of unknowns and you're panicking, or if you depend upon this to put dinner on the table. It's a different story than if you're just doing it for kicks.
No, it's extremely true. Well, awesome. So can you take me to this point in time where, okay, you have what you want in mind for your business? What kind of brought you to Empire Flippers for that next step? And tell me about that moment of, finding that the business that you ended up buying from us. How did you know that one was the one for you?
So I watched different businesses on Empire Flippers for around a year, I think. And I would go in and investigate and kind of passively sit back and look for, I guess you could call them weaknesses. Or I'm looking for a business that is priced at a certain amount, but it's priced there because something's either wrong with it or something's not being managed correctly, or there's another piece that I could fix so that I could go in, I could learn everything I could about the business, about the Amazon structure, and then raise the valuation by making a couple changes or managing it more effectively. What really drove me to this business that I found is that I noticed, and they mentioned it as well on Empire Flippers, that there was an issue with managing inventory. They're running out every month or two. I don't know if it was cash flow problems or where it actually came from. But that's a relatively, in my opinion, easy problem to fix with forecasting, with analytics, trying to determine how much product you actually need and making sure it's available. So I saw it as an ability to potentially double the size of this business just by making sure they had product on the shelves. Now, what brought me over to Empire Flippers is, I'd watched for a while. I put down some cash deposits, and this is 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I guess, or 2 years ago, and just making sure all the money came back and everything along those lines. And I kind of built out some trust and rapport there by going through and looking at the different sites. And then you all had some great customer service as well, reaching out, talking to someone live. Coming in at 26-year-old and buying a $30,000 business isn't something that, it's something that makes you sweat a little bit at that age. And I just wanted to make sure I was comfortable and able to do it. And you all had great support and live people that you can talk to that were very, explaining, reassuring, making sure I understood the process and making sure we removed as many unknowns as possible.
Yeah, it's really great to hear you say that, Henry, and highlighting the process of the transition and migrating the business over to you, and that whole process being streamlined and very kind of comfortable for you to go through that for your first business that you purchased on our marketplaces. It's always great to hear that feedback. And I'm curious, so like during the deal, you find this business that you're interested in investing in, and during the deal, was there anything that you negotiated on, or was there any type of support or anything else that you had experience with prior to making that final step in acquiring this asset?
From a negotiation standpoint, I didn't really negotiate much because I looked at it and I thought it was a steal at the current price. So I moved on it pretty quick. From the standpoint of trying to receive help and support, I think a lot of that came from me not necessarily knowing what I was doing yet. And I'm a big believer that the best way to learn is to do. And that's why I picked one of the ones that were cheaper on your store, just in case everything went out the window. You could survive, you could come back. It's not a huge deal. But again, the important part was me going through and doing. And I didn't necessarily know starting up an FBA, like what parts of the businesses were transferred, what were moved around. And I remember a lot of that was a pretty solid learning curve for me at the beginning, understanding which parts of the business I was actually buying, realizing I was buying like brands and product lines as opposed to like an entire business, and it was getting separated out. So some of that took some help and support. But the nice thing about Empire Flippers, again, is that y'all were there pretty much every step of the way. It made it much easier. It took a little longer than we anticipated, but I think that's more because I didn't really know what I was getting into starting out. And I definitely don't have regrets there. I mean, that's how you learn. And I'd much rather do that with a business where I'm trying to understand, where I'm trying to learn, compared to one where it's my baby or something that I've built from the ground up. And all of a sudden, because I don't know something or I don't have the experience, it's floundering or it's not making it, or I've sunk 200K in the hole and it's not working, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. You don't want a large chunk of capital to be invested in something that's kind of high risk, high reward stakes, but you also want to make sure that you're getting that ROI from this investment after your due diligence process. And speaking of the due diligence process, were you finding kind of similar listings on our marketplace to this business that you ultimately purchased? Or was it kind of a spread of just kind of a lot of different things that might not have stuck out to you as much as this particular asset?
There were a good spread. And the reason why this one popped up to me again is that it was a physical asset that had good reviews in the Amazon store. And I know how important it is to find a product that people like. I mean, I have some of the product at my house. I've worn them. I've tried them out. And I mean, I do think that they're quality. And essentially the reason why I got drawn to this, again, is that it was physical, something that I could learn how to develop that supply chain, learn how to ship it out. The other products I was looking at, or the other actual businesses, were all digital, and I already had experience in that area. And the other thing I knew is I wasn't as familiar with the Google experience. I work very well with Amazon. I know how to actually work with Amazon numbers. I understand how a good amount of the Amazon internals work, from at least from the outside looking in. I don't think anyone really knows what's inside that box. But at the point where I could handle the Amazon side. But if you go to a website and it's all based upon Google, all based upon Google search terms, I knew I was in the dark there. And I had a little bit of a fear that I wouldn't actually be able to run that well because I didn't understand the full algorithms at length. So I wanted to stick to Amazon and make sure I had a better idea of how to actually run it for a physical product. And that's really what made it stand out. The other thing as well is, I mean, if you have a physical product, you're purchasing inventory. From my experience, this is one that was on the cheaper end of what's typically available on Empire Flippers for something that actually has physical inventory. And that's what drew me over to it as well. That it was something that wasn't crazy expensive. At the same time, it had physical inventory. If all goes south, I at least have the inventory I can figure out to do something with. And it's not like a digital product where if Google changes up their algorithm, something else changes, you're completely out of business because no one is seeing your site anymore.
All right.
This question just came to mind listening to you talk about this. And you said you were 26 when you bought the business?
I think, let me see. Yeah, I think I was 26.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Were you scared? Were you well supported in this? Like, did people think you were absolutely nuts at 26 buying a business, or were you just like all in? You knew it was going to be fine. I don't know. What was your feelings like, and what was your sort of community around you saying at the time?
I mean, I definitely talked to my parents a little bit about it because my parents have some experience in entrepreneurship, and I mean, it's gone both well and poorly for them. They've had good years and bad years. And before this, I'd probably had 3 or 4 different businesses I tried to launch on my own. I'd say I had about a 25% success rate. Like for every 5 ideas you get or 4 ideas you get, 1 typically works out. So I walked into this knowing that, I mean, you could just see that money disappear. But the big thing for me is I already had that successful authorship business that I was running. And I purchased this business with those funds from the author business. So it's split up in a way that I wasn't risking my real life or my typical paycheck that's coming in from my day job. That wasn't actually a risk. It was all stuff that I'd already earned doing side businesses. I was just funneling back into it. So it was an acceptable risk for me. And it was something where, I mean, if I told my friends I was buying a business, I don't think any of them had an idea at the time of how much it was worth. I think a lot of them thought it was just a I don't know, buying 50 pairs of units and trying to sell them on Amazon. And at the same time, it's much different than that. So, I mean, the numbers weren't something I typically shared until, I don't know, maybe a year or two after.
Wow. It's really cool. We definitely see a range of entrepreneurs come to our marketplace, and it does always kind of take me aback when I hear someone who's like, oh, I did this in college, or in high school or whatever. And you're like, wow, kudos.
That's crazy.
That's impressive.
You're coming out in high school and buying a business. I can understand building one because
building one more or less. But you'd
While
be
most
surprised.
people are trying to get their down payment for a house, here you are purchasing a digital asset.
Exactly. It's cool. It's just it's a nice difference. But like, I'm sure we'll get into this next. It can pay off. It can sort of give you a different sort of wealth generation that a lot of people can't wrap their heads around. So Let's talk about that. Like, take me through step by step the differences that you made to this business when you first bought it. If you can think about it in like a timeline perspective. So, month 1, month 3, whatever. I just think that'd be really helpful for our audience, buying hopefuls who want to know what is a good roadmap when you take on an FBA acquisition.
Absolutely. And again, I want to clarify, like, it's not all pretty. Like, there are some areas it had its ups and downs, right? It's the one thing I always tell people that ask me about buying a business, and you hear about all the good stuff. It's like when you hear about your friend that's trading stocks, you always hear about like the good things that they do or the things that are really beautiful. You don't always hear about the losses. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, there's definitely things that come in and sting and hurt. But at the same time, over the course of a long period of time, you see those wins. So I came in, I bought the business, I think again, around 30, 33, I think was the amount, and then paid for the inventory. I believe it was $16,000. So together around $50,000 for the business. I was ready, having this money basically available from writing and selling novels online. I picked that up. And at that point, I realized you had to do the transfer of the business. At this point, I really didn't understand how a business was transferred. I didn't realize that essentially I was buying a piece of a larger business from what I understand now. And there were product lines that were getting switched over to me. So it took a lot longer than I anticipated. I think it took maybe 12, 13 weeks to actually get this whole thing switched over. And a lot of that was due to Amazon's part of having certain restrictions of what you're allowed to sell. This product was in a category where you had to get approved to actually sell in there. It was very difficult to get Amazon to actually write those approvals. So that was our first big hurdle. And that came with, calling Amazon every night, trying to get this pushed through. And eventually, once it goes, the gates are open and it completely flowed through. Fortunately, during that time, the original seller was still selling product through FBA, and I actually was bringing in revenue from that as well. So it's not like those months were completely dry. I'd say that was probably the first 3 to 4 months of buying. After that, I worked and tried to develop a new product line. So I've probably spent, I'd say $3,000 to $4,000 developing this new line. And these were 5 new product designs that I was able to actually sell on the Amazon store. And the problem with that is that we had some issues with that supplier later on down the line. So while I would say recouping the initial cost, that never really quite panned out in that we weren't actually able to buy more product. And that's an area where I could get involved in again and trying to develop. But we had some issues with that supplier that don't make me think I can go back to them. And then if I go over and bring in new suppliers, it's a very competitive space. So I'm concerned that I wouldn't actually be able to bring that product back. And I learned at that point something important is that I think I had 25 SKUs starting out. Now I think I have 15 because I cut 10 of them and they were all the low value SKUs. And it cuts your work value in half. And that's when I actually started to see my business really grow. And the reason why is because I could focus upon the SKUs that were remaining and figuring out the best way to grow those and push those. From my time as an author, I knew one of the biggest things that can really accelerate you is advertising, is developing a fan group, is showing people who are looking for your product that you have what's right for them and that they'll be happy, and ensuring that they are happy. And one of the areas I started to focus upon after that, this is probably month, I would say 12 or so, is on advertising, looking at different ways that you could start playing around with AMS ads and trying to get people to buy your product or see it. And a lot of that is experimentation. You have to figure out, it's not as simple as telling Amazon, hey, here's $100, go advertise on my products. What it really comes out to be is here's $100 and these are the little niches or the areas or the things that people are looking for and they're trying to buy. These are the undersearched keywords, or these are the different areas where my product is unique and it stands out. Whether it's your product looks better or works better than the other competition, you really have to understand why someone might purchase yours over someone else. And especially if you're trying to sell it at a premium, realize what is it that makes you pop on the store and really drive that point home in your advertising. That's when I started to see the business really start to take off. Up until this point, I've been working on stabilizing inventory flows. So at the 12 mark, I would say that all the inventory was relatively stabilized. It was all available. I brought back some SKUs that in the past had been removed, but in my opinion were very high margin SKUs. And they've been the most successful that I've seen so far. After that point, I mean, we start getting into the next year or so, or the next couple months, where just seeing it stabilize, trying to understand the AMS ads. And that's when COVID essentially happened. And with COVID, the big part was I saw an enormous new demand that appeared. And we were rushing to keep up with that demand. I mean, I don't know necessarily if this is because people couldn't go to the stores. I don't know if this is a product that might be associated with activities that occurred with COVID happening. But because of this demand, we sold at rates 5 to 6 times our normal, and we ran out of inventory in around 3 months. So at that point, it's a great problem to have, but because we ran out of inventory, we couldn't actually sell. And from that point moving forward, it's been about picking up new inventory, trying to increase the bettering our supply chain, and make sure that we always have stuff available if our customer's looking for, we don't have a sellout problem. And currently in the future, what we're looking at is how to actually develop another layer, how to get another layer between me and Amazon or our suppliers and Amazon so that you can always have product available or have more of a flow as opposed to a batch process.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm thinking so many different things right now. I do want to leave off on the note you're just talking about, the business kind of going through these rapid changes and, having incredible growth during COVID. Can we dig into that like a little bit more? Because it's something that talking to FBA sellers recently, or buyers and sellers recently, it's everybody had to face some kind of challenge related to Amazon during COVID.
I'm sure.
Yeah. It's incredibly for you. You had the best sort of problem, which was, okay, your sales went through the roof, but then that obviously affects your stock and having to deal with that. So can you maybe walk me through some of those challenges that happened and some of the things that you learned about dealing with that in the process?
Absolutely. So again, I mean, a lot of this bases upon the theories that I think might have actually occurred to increase that demand. And there's some areas that I'm not entirely sure of, but where I think it might have occurred is I think my competitors might have ran out of product because Amazon was limiting the amount of product that actually gets sent back. And essentially the problem there is I'm running at 100-day lead time. So I noticed that my supplies are going 5 to 6 times higher than normal. I noticed that I'm floating higher on the Amazon charts, and I need to backfill way faster than normal. So a lot of that was reaching out to suppliers, trying to see what I could get on hand, what I could actually get made and shipped over. Looking back, I mean, when we initially saw COVID in March, April, no one really knew how long it was going to last. So this wasn't something that in March or April I was too concerned about. I thought it might go on for another month, 2 months, who knows how long it would go on. But I didn't really expect this surge to just continue and a huge amount of sales just come in. And looking back, I wish I had put those orders in sooner, had that actually come in more available to prevent that sort of sellout situation. Another thing is I tweaked my advertising, and I also thought that was my advertising driving the sales, which it very well could be as well, or some combination of the two. I noticed with my novel sales that a lot of AMS ads went down in price. So you get a lot better deal for your money on ads, because I'm assuming some people were relatively cash short. A lot of loan areas couldn't actually give out loans. So people that might have been pulling loans to run ads weren't able to actually do it. And I think that's what also affected it and made those sales go up. And I thought that if I just cut my advertising, those sales would go down. But I think either the Amazon algorithm picked up that people were looking at my product and trying to sell it, or it was, again, the COVID impact. And when I cut my advertising and hoped that all my sales would decrease, and I mean, it's pretty rare that you want your sales to decrease, but you don't want to sell it on Amazon, they just kept going. So really what I would say for someone coming into a situation like this is be on your toes. When you start seeing those sales uptick, be ready to take that risk and buy extra, and just be ready, especially if you have as long of a lead time as I do. And then I think that third layer comes in and can protect you more.
Yeah, that's really excellent information, Henry, and solid mention as well, too. And people, that's something that Sarah and I had just had another call with an Amazon FBA buyer and had the same topic discussion about, scaling too quickly. So, not having the capital or the investment needed to restock your inventory should your sales go through the roof, even through what most businesses are probably feeling might be a heartache or maybe a decline in their monthly net profits. Here, you're experiencing 5 to 6 X growth in your monthly sales, and now suddenly you're having these issues that are coming up with, keeping the items in stock, or, your longer lead times in doing so. And then that also leads me into my next question as well for you, Henry, is how has this business ultimately affected your entire portfolio as a whole? Has it been a solid foundation to kind of help feed into your other projects and help those kind of blossom and grow further? Or has this been kind of just something more on the passive side that you kind of keep in the back pocket?
I mean, the way I see this is giving better returns, such as the stock market or other avenues I could put my money, and it's relatively passive. So I have this as a way that it's like a little bit of a safety net now. I've seen this running for 2-3 years. It's relatively stable. The money goes in, the money goes out, and I relatively know what I can get and how I can grow it. And until the past, 6 months, there were definitely upticks and I was seeing improvements in growth, but I wasn't seeing that explosive growth. Now that I saw that explosive growth, my question is, can I replicate it? So can I go and be able to get this business up to running 5 to 6 times its current value? And then at that point, I would want to sell it off as a business that is well packaged, that we have written instructions for, that whoever picks it up can keep to run it for years to come and make sure that they are getting those awesome returns on it. And then I can maybe go find another smaller one to run off. Or, just keep it as it's going and keep that base amount in, so that if I take bigger risks on other businesses or bigger risks on other ideas, I can survive essentially. If I go and I spend $10,000 on trying to develop a new SaaS platform, which I did last year, I spent the 10 on it and then it really just didn't have that big of a market niche. The demand for it wasn't as big as I thought. And that was ultimately something that fell through. That was $10,000 coming out of my pocket. It'd be really upsetting. But with it $10,000 coming out of, your revenues and looking at it as a reinvestment point, it's a lot better and easier to stomach. So it keeps your creativity flowing. Again, whenever I run a business or I start a business, there's usually a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 shot that this thing actually works. And that's what I've seen in the past. The ones that work, they pay off, they're awesome, they kill it. But the other 3 are, they hit the graveyard. And so you have to be ready to invest money like that, or you have to be ready to have that cash flow so that when you want to push something, when you want to try to see if you can get it to work, it can tank and you'll be all right. And that way you can pick up the next idea. So many people think that there's a business idea, you get it, you're rich, you move forward, and you've never failed or never created a bad business. And I probably have 15 businesses in the past that are in this graveyard that fortunately most of them are just time and effort, not too much money. But there are areas that you learn from each one and you figure out how to succeed. And the ones that succeed and grow are your babies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have a well-diversified portfolio. And like you said, once you have built it up to the full potential that you're able to scale the asset, then now you can exit that business, sell it off to the next guy or girl, make sure that they can be set up to ultimately scale it to what they might consider its full potential might be, whether that's, in the same direction that you've been making your business plan for that asset or not, totally up to them. But at least you've kind of built that foundation for them and they can carry it on from there. So I really wanted to ask you, so being that this was kind of one of your first online business investment, you saw this Amazon FBA opportunity, you took it, obviously it really worked out for you in the long end. After you had mentioned earlier in the call is obviously a few dips and a few hurdles that you had to get over. But what do you feel Amazon FBA offers as far as a few easy growth opportunities or easy growth wins for this model, and things that you've noticed just from your experience over the years now having optimized these types of assets?
I think the important parts, so there's 2. So one is if you're trying to buy one, where are the easy ways to grow it, or if you already own one?
Yeah, both ends, I guess, could work in this instance.
Okay. I would say, my experience is in supply chain management, making sure that that product is on the shelves. So my favorite type of business to buy is one that has inventory problems, because typically to me, that means that people are buying, there's high demand, but you just can't fill it. And especially if you have a high margin, you can keep some more inventory on the shelves. You don't have to run as tight. I always think it's important to look for a high margin because that gives you more opportunity for error. So that's one area where I want to speak to is if you increase your ability to make mistakes, you increase the amount that you can grow, because you can actually go out there and you can try different things. You can experiment. And you're not scared that you're going to lose your shirt because something failed or didn't flow through. So when you look at businesses, try to find, in my opinion, the one that is either higher or that's higher margin if you're trying to really increase its growth, and then try to find one that has some sort of problem that indicates like a blessing in disguise. Again, if you are looking at inventory and the inventory is running out, that means that you've got people that want your product. You just got to get it to them. And that's a great problem to have. So I think that's the first part, is looking for those blessing in disguises that occur in businesses and trying to read the numbers and understand when that actually occurs. And then the second part about like trying to grow and make it larger and the areas that you should look at is you always want to move away from the herd, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is when I say move away from the herd, if everyone is doing something, usually that means it's oversaturated. If everyone is going after one thing or one keyword or one marketing tactic, it might work, but a lot of times that means that there's a lot of money and a lot of bigger players than you are in that area, and you're just going to get eaten and stomped out. So in my opinion, you have to always have your ears open, be available, and look for new opportunities, whether that's through keyword marketing. I mean, that's a very easy one where you just try to find the areas that are not stomped out, where there's less competition. You're trying to pick it up through there. Or maybe it's through trying to find, I don't know, if you look at all your competitors, if they're all claiming their product does one thing, well, what's something that you can look at and say your product does? I mean, truthfully, it does, or it realistically fits that niche or hole. And you can advertise your product that way. So you're the one that stands out. In my opinion, that's what really makes my businesses successful, is that they're different. There's something that, I mean, if someone's looking for something different, or if they're coming from a different angle, you don't move with the herd, you move on your own.
No, it's super awesome to hear your perspective on this and kind of all the different ways that you've used to grow your business. Taking a step back, getting out of the sort of nitty-gritty of growing businesses, I want to ask a personal question. How has buying this business changed your life? I would like to hope that it's been positive. Maybe you can tell me it's been negative, but yeah, how has buying a business changed your life for better or worse?
I definitely think it's for the better. I mean, so much of it is, there's a lot of excitement. Again, it feels like a game that you're playing. You get this ability to try to grow your money or grow yourself. And it almost feels like a college course where you're coming in and learning and bettering yourself. I've learned so much through this, that these are real skills that now, especially if I want to take it to the day job, I can talk marketing, or I can talk about CPCs, or whatever it is, that metric that they're working on. That in the past, I grew up as an engineer, or I graduated as an engineer. I might not have a clue about how any of that marketing works, or how like those data points or what actually matters. And that opens up a lot of avenues. When you start talking to other business owners, when you start even at the corporate office or wherever it is that you're at, and you have this new ability, you've bettered yourself. You've essentially, it's way better in my opinion than getting a certificate or something, because you've done it, you're an expert, and your money's on the line. So you have to hold yourself accountable. It's not like if you fail, you don't get an F. If you fail, you're out 40 grand. Mm-hmm. So, that's a pretty great motivator, is to actually go and better yourself and learn. So much of this online area, some of it's luck, I agree. A lot of it is trying to understand the little bitty details that matter and the ones that don't. And you really learn those when you go in. And again, it makes you a better person. You view the world in a different way on how you can take a product, make it succeed. But that also applies to your personal life, when you realize how much little details matter, how much little things every day, if you do something, it can add up over a long period and actually make change. The biggest thing for me, again, is enabling you to take more risk. If I want to go and I want to develop a SaaS product or something, I don't have to code it from scratch anymore. Now I can go hire some coder that's better than me or smarter than me or faster than me to go do it for me. And I don't have to stay up till 1 a.m. every night focusing upon it. So that's something that, again, enables you to make better decisions, or enables you to put more money out there to actually accomplish those risks that can have way bigger payoffs. And then the last thing that's important too, in the way that it changes your life, is you have to view your quality of life or your spend. And so many people, when they look at how much money they're spending, they base it upon how much they're making. And there's that question of, what should I be doing at this stage? Should I be going and buying another house? Should I buy that brand new car that's on the lot? Should I get a boat? A business is similar in that when you buy it, that's your toy, or that's your prized possession. I'm 28. I just bought a house, or I'm just going to buy a house, I think, this year. In the past, I've always rented. I've always lived with people. I prefer that lifestyle, so I don't have a problem with it. But if you're buying a house, you probably can't buy a business as well. If you're buying that brand new car on the lot before you're successful, you're probably not going to do it too. So there is some sort of sacrifice there. But I think so much of it is sacrificing superficial stuff or materialistic views. And usually if your business runs well, you can eventually get those at the end if that's what you're after anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said any better, Henry, and very solid mentions and points as well that you bring up. And, the subject as well is getting rid of, some of the smaller materialistic things that you can ultimately figure out a way to make money, right? So, investing in these digital properties or these online assets and being able to grow it and scale it to, even with your own experience, to the levels you have, offers a great opportunity. And so that you set you up for the chance to exit that business and have a large chunk of capital to invest in that real estate property once you're finally ready for that time. Well, that's really good to hear as well. So what was that? I'm sorry.
I said that, or buy a new business, jump back in and reinvest and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The opportunity is definitely there to reinvest that capital, and it's great to see the market continue to provide really great opportunities for people, especially the ones that we've seen come across our marketplace as well too. Now, so tell us, it's great to hear about your experience growing this Amazon FBA business, like ultimately building up this foundation for your portfolio and reaping the benefits for all of your hard work and efforts over the years. But tell us now, so what are some of your future upcoming projects? What are some current things that you're working on right now, Henry?
Absolutely. So I've really got three, and one of each of them, or there's one for each business I own. So there's three main businesses I have. The first one, again, and where everything is built on, is the author business. I've got two new books coming out this year, so I'm excited to have written those, be publishing those on the Amazon store. Can't wait to see them on there, and I'm really trying to get a bestseller tag for those. So I'm really excited to push those out. One of them's for a series, another one's for a brand new series as well. So I'm very excited to see that go, and can't wait to actually push those. I mean, that's a lot of my passion comes from writing. So I'll see those hit the store. And then in the same way that you have a business that you love, I mean, I hope to get sales off them. I also just love to write. So that's a good thing that I expect out of there. From this business, the Amazon FBA one, I want to look and actually try to figure out how to prepare that for a sale, how to potentially get back to that 5 to 6 times growth and be able to give it to someone so that it's their baby. Again, I don't believe in pumping up businesses or making them larger than they look to sell it off on someone and leave them with something that might not be as big as I expected. I want to develop something that I can give to them, that it's passive, that it's been optimized. They have a check sheet. They know exactly what to do, and then they can be happy and see returns on their money too. I always want a happy customer. So I want to try to grow this in a way that's sustainable. And then the last project I have is I'm working on a new SaaS product. This is something that I believe will really help productivity in the workplace. It should help any sort of computer calculation times that you use and you try to develop for analysts that are either in financial models or they're in engineering areas. We think we found a way to severely reduce the amount of computational time that it takes to actually develop modeling or develop different areas in analytics. And so I'm working with a friend or two on this one, and we're excited, and we're hoping we can launch it in 3 to 4 weeks. We have most of our back end built, and we're excited for it again because we think it can make a pretty big difference in how quickly people can run modeling and statistics.
Amazing. Well, you're off to some really exciting stuff. It's like, I love hearing how you've kind of got all these fires going, but they seem to all be burning quite nicely. So congratulations, especially on the KDP front. Very cool to see someone running a KDP business and actually authoring the books themselves. But it's a nice way of actually running the business and being the active author. I don't see that often. So very cool. Congratulations.
It's so much fun. Love it. I mean, again, if you view it as a game, if you view it as your downtime or what you do when you come home, it makes it a lot easier. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, kind of like a couple just rapid fire sort of questions. Sure. I was wondering what your top 3 either tools, books, I guess learning resources have been while running your businesses.
So the first one is the experts, right? So you look at the people that have done really well and you figure out what they're doing. My biggest tool that I would use, I'd say, for authoring is there's some SaaS services out there that do really well. What I use is one called KDP Rocket or Kindlepreneur. And this brilliant guy put together a software that actually helps you see all the Amazon rankings and keywords. And so much of that applies to other aspects as well. When you understand how keywords work for books, you understand how they work for other widgets, and you can understand basically how to optimize those. So that was a big one there. Again, there's other software services. One is called Yasiv, Y-A-S-I-V. That shows how different product webs work together. So you can figure out that someone buying one widget is buying these other widgets as well and figure out how to better advertise to them. And then when I say experts as well, I've definitely had calls with experts. I reach out to someone that I think knows what they're doing and is doing really well, and you pick their brains for an hour. You might spend $400, $500 getting them for that hour or whatever it takes, but if they're worth it, then that money is absolutely worth it. And they can save you a lot of time. You definitely want their experience.
Awesome. And how about this? So what about you had a funniest or weirdest moment during your career as an online business builder or buyer?
Let me think. There's definitely some of them out there. Yeah, I think my favorite thing is when you run ads, especially on Facebook. I mean, on Facebook, there's all sorts of people. And some of the comments you get on ads are just ridiculous. Whether you're running it for a product, people completely misinterpret what your product is or what it might be available. Because when you're showing it to a million people, you're definitely going to get a couple of people out there that don't necessarily know. My favorite one is I wrote a book about colonizing a planet, and someone just wrote in all capitalizations, fake news, as if they thought this is a news article that we had just colonized.
Wow.
Right. So
no.
you have I mean, I think it's funny because it's interesting because whenever you have churn on ads or stuff like that, it's usually beneficial. So if someone goes and writes fake news in all caps, well, all of a sudden 10 other people are commenting on there telling them that they're wrong. And it really actually makes your ad take off. So it's funny how some stuff like that or weird things can have these weird positive cycles that come after them.
Yeah. And gaining a little extra traffic as well, just from stirring up the pot a little bit. It's great.
There is nothing gains you more traffic than being wrong on the internet, in my opinion. If you can have a misspelled word or something like that, it's counterintuitive, but people love to correct things.
It's so true. Sometimes, quote unquote, bad publicity is still publicity, at the end of the day.
That's right.
So what would you say is the secret sauce to success as a brand new buyer? What does it take to really do well as a brand new buyer?
I think a lot of it's about business selection. Again, look for the things that are the blessings in disguise. Like they look ugly, but they're good. The next thing, I mean, you hear this from people like Mike Rowe, but I mean, success is disguised in, I think it's called overalls and hard work. And you really got to enjoy the work so that you come and look forward to it and you actually do the hard work. And the other thing is you have to find things that other people don't want to do. The really sexy products have 10 people lined up out the door to go. Some of the unsexy ones that people still want, you can get great returns on it. You don't have to be the one selling the coolest thing on the block. And usually if you are, you're paying for it in a different way. So I think it's important to find the things that aren't necessarily that cool or aren't necessarily that sexy. Or again, if it's like my SaaS service, it's analytics modeling. I mean, how many people come and walk in a bar and talk about how they're selling analytics software? I mean, you put a whole bunch of people to sleep, right? So, I mean, there's a value in finding things that aren't that hot or aren't that sexy because they're overlooked.
I love that. I think that's amazing advice. Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation, Henry, and I've certainly learned a lot today. It's been really great having you on. Was there anything that we might have missed during this conversation, or you feel like we've kind of covered everything there is you need to know?
I mean, there's a lot that you need to know out there. Again, do your research, talk to experts, and make sure you enjoy something. There's nothing worse than coming home from the 9 to 5, dragging yourself to work an extra 2 hours on something that you just hate. So whatever it is that you buy, enjoy it. Make sure that you're not just doing it for the cash, or else your chances of failing, in my opinion, are way higher, and you're just not going to enjoy your life. So find something that you like.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I'll end it on that note then, because I think that's pretty solid advice. Thank you again for coming on and doing this. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed this time today.
Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again, Henry. It was great talking to you and hearing about your story.
Hey everyone, as promised, now that we've wrapped up the episode and learned a little bit more about looking for blessings in disguise when making an Amazon FBA acquisition, we wanted to connect you with some of our best listings in the Amazon FBA space that offer great growth potential for those looking to get into the monetization themselves. So first, to kick things off, we have listing 47669. This listing is a really multifaceted Amazon kind of umbrella business. So it's Amazon FBA, Amazon KDP, and Amazon merch all wrapped up into this one listing. The reason that I picked this out is really just because it reminded me of Henry's point that you can use your, current skills on Amazon. So in his case, his skill set was in KDP, and applied that to launching himself into Amazon FBA. He figured, well, I know the Amazon FBA, or at least the Amazon algorithm. That means I can expand into somewhere else, and it worked out. So I think it's something that people don't utilize often, but should. And I think business is a rare opportunity to do just that. And better, it's already well established in every single one of those monetizations. So it wouldn't necessarily mean starting from scratch. You just have these 3 businesses kind of going under the umbrella business. So I love that it's well diversified. It's really leaning on Amazon to help it make money and stay successful. It's selling across the US, UK, and EU markets. And yeah, I think this is just a prime opportunity for somebody who really loves the idea of having a brand that has multi-streams of income. I don't think there's a better opportunity than this. So yeah, that's the reason that I really liked this one for today's episode.
Yeah, it's really great to see you mention this as well, Sarah. And, I've also taken a look at this listing and seen that, it has great potential just having such a well-diversified, revenue stream and source of income coming through multiple monetizations. And that also brings up something that I've noticed as well as a great opportunity, not even just with expanding into multiple monetizations, but even with Amazon FBA in general, when you have a little bit more of an opportunity to experiment with things. So this listing in particular that I found, listing number 46437, is an Amazon FBA business in the home and kitchenware niches. Now, it only has 11 SKUs, but that's great for someone that's wanting to get started in Amazon FBA that might not be too familiar with, how the logistics works or managing hundreds or thousands of SKUs in under one account. So this is a great opportunity for someone that might want to come in, give Amazon FBA a try, or even maybe add an Amazon FBA monetization to their portfolio. Another great opportunity I've noticed within this listing is that there hasn't been much done with PPC or social. So that offers some potential for a buyer to come in, maybe improve or optimize the PPC campaigns that are currently set up, or maybe start new ones, and then also run a great marketing and social campaign to kind of promote the products, from there further. Also utilizing the branded domain that's included with this listing could offer a huge, growth opportunity for someone to come in that has a little bit of these skills already under their belt. And all right, everyone. So that wraps up the 10th episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope that you've gained some valuable insight over the past 10 episodes on this series, and that you've been able to learn something in how you can take advantage in the online business space.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also wanted to give a shout out to Matthew Abraham on our YouTube channel for the great comment, and ChrisBet90 on our Apple Podcast channel for their awesome review of the show. Also, a huge thanks to everyone who has left us comments and reviews on the podcast. When you do leave a review or rating, it helps us reach a wider audience and helps others find the show. So if you have anything you would like to learn more from our interviewees, be sure to leave a comment and tell us what you'd like to know. We appreciate every single one of you. And if you enjoyed the podcast so far, be sure to click the link in the description and subscribe from your preferred podcast network. That way you'll be updated when new episodes go live.
Yeah, that's right. So until next time, we're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah. And thanks for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast.